Okay, so here's just gonna be a quick video on, well, an 8.25 scramble, the scramble that Yuri Grangedo holds his NR on. So I asked, well, four other different Roux solvers, well, three, because Yuri and I already did this scramble at some point. So I asked three other Roux solvers to kind of find their solutions for it, and in general they were pretty similar except for like one exception, but the solutions are different enough to the point where it was worth making a video on. So what Yuri did was he saw this kind of pair with the orange and the green and the yellow. So the DL is over here. So when he does an R prime and then a U2, he can pair it up like that. So what he then saw is after the R prime, kind of you have this sort of pair forming. So after like the U2 and then S, it kind of forms. So what Yuri did for first block was just an R prime over here. A DR's here, but I don't think Yuri saw this or thought about doing an F wide instead, but I'll talk about that later anyways in a later solution. But Yuri just did like an R prime and then a U2 and S prime over here, and then U prime F prime to solve his first block, which leaves his DR over here. And what he does then is solves DR like this, and then he notices this sort of thing. So it does a like an R wide, and then pairs this at the back, like this, and then does an R, and then that gives him a free second pair. And then this case, you can recognize it's like a kind of forward slash. So he does a U prime and then does his AUG, which starts like with an R wide prime. So like that. And then he gets this case where his EO is done, and he has this his LR over here and here. So he does a LR like this. Well, he does a U prime, and then he has this sort of thing. So yeah, that was an 825 solve, and was really lucky, which is kind of obvious given, well, the time. So anyways, what I decided to do was essentially the exact same solution as Johung's, except I did first block differently. So I'm just going to be talking about my solution and Johung's solution at the same time. And in the middle, I'll talk about Ryan's solution because he did do something slightly different after doing the same first block. So my thought process was the same as Yuri's. I kind of saw this thing and then this thing. Oh, I also didn't do this solve in finals because I didn't make Worlds finals. I did this afterwards because I wanted to see what I would get. But yeah, did an R prime and then U2. And I saw that after like an FY prime, this would be here. And then after the F prime to insert this pair, this would go here. So it's just an R prime away from being solved. So I did like R prime and then U2 prime and FY prime over here to bring DR there and make this pair. And then insert this pair. And over here, I saw this corner and this edge. So I did like an R2 and then paired this up at the back like this. And over here I did an R wide because I didn't see anything over here and I saw that this wasn't my edge. So I did an R wide to make the back one that I can't see to go here. And I see that it's red, so I do an M prime to get this case. And it gives me a Nick class, which I do this Nick class for. And then LR's here and there. So for this, it's just like M prime, U prime, M to set up into good arrow and carry on. And it gives me a 4C skip with an M2. So the way Johung and Ryan did it, at least first block, Johung's solution after first block was the exact same as mine, so we can leave that. But for first block, they did something different, where they solved DR and then noticed that this and this would pair up in like a B move like that. So then after an R, like kind of an R2, RY2, this edge over here goes to the front, and after the F prime, it goes there. So it's the same thing as what we did, as what I did, but just executed differently. So they did a D prime and then RY2, and insert in the back with a B prime, and then insert the front one. So where Ryan deviated was he did an RY2 here instead, and then did like a U prime M prime, and then solved this pair at the back. And he didn't do an R wide here. He did a normal R move and then kind of paired this at the back like that, and then solved it in the front. And then it gave him this Niklas, which he did this. He also saw that, like, kind of after what he did, he would be able to cancel into LSE, so that's what he decided to do. Although canceling into LSE doesn't really save too many moves anyways, but he does cancel into LSE by doing this, and instead of doing R wide to give it a normal thing, he just does an R, and then does a U and then M prime, which gives him an arrow, and I'm pretty sure he saw the arrow happening after Niklas, so then it's a stacked arrow, which is a good one, so he just does ULR and solves. So that was Ryan's solution, which was a bit different to Johung and my solution, and definitely different to Yuri's because he did a different first block, but in general they were pretty similar and we all got the same CMLL. So yeah. And this solution by Flingpelt was like different. He opted for a different first block than what we did, and it's because you have this kind of bar, pseudo bar type thing, and then the edge over here is like an FR2 from being solved, like that. So what he did was insert this pair, like this piece, by doing an R and then D and M prime, which solves that, and then it puts this in a position to be placed with a B2 and then D. And what he then does over here is like R prime and then U, and he solves this using an M2 and then solving like that. What he could have done is just M prime and then solve, which would have been better, but he does an M2 and then solve, and he then sees this thing over here, so he cancels by doing like an R2 and then insert this piece over there and solve this pair like this, and it gives him a diag L case where he does a normal AUG and it flips these two, so it gives him an arrow case, which is like this, and then he does like M prime, like two M primes, because one of his LR is here, so he wants to keep this one on bottom, so he does two M primes, and then does a U2 and inserts this in the back, and then it gives him a 4C skip once again. So yeah, the Scramble will be in the description, and it's pretty worthwhile to try because, well, it's an easy Scramble, and you might notice the things that well, all of us managed to see here, and hopefully you learned something from this.